Hey everyone. All right, I think we should be live now. I haven't actually done a Google Hangout with as sort of a webinar before, just recording auto programmers. So let me see. I can't see if there's any questions. I know that that Q&A app is supposed to be running. And then I put a link in the Q&A in the channel, so you should be able to join if you want to join. It might be easier to just then we can just talk here on the channel. Trying to see if there's, I don't know if there's even any way for me to get feedback. It'll take a second here. I'll figure this out here. Let's see. Is anyone able to join that link? Kestrel, can I pick on you? Can you try it or message me and let me know? And are you guys seeing the Q&A app? I'm not seeing that. That's supposed to be running. Let me see if is there a way that you can ask questions? Okay, here we go. Maybe this is ask your audience to submit questions. Okay, so if you guys can see, if someone wants to submit a question, there should be like a Q&A app if you're watching. Anyone? I'm going to try and join in another window to see if I can get that working. Oh, I see a test that just came through. Okay, so it looks like it works. So and I see Calvin has sent a message, and Anthony Burke. Okay, so looks like we're good. Apparently, you guys can hear me. It's not. I was hoping it'd be more interactive. Did that link work? Any of you guys? Have you been able to? I might have to individually invite you into this Hangout if I can't just publicly. Let me see. Try and make this public if I can. All right, it doesn't look like that's probably going to work here. So actually, if you want to join the Google Hangout, if you want to just ask as a question your email address, and then I'll just invite you like that. And then if you have any questions in the meantime that you want me to answer about soft skills or anything in the book, go ahead and ask the questions there, and I'll try to answer them while we're getting that going. Oh, it looks like Kestrel, are you there? Are you able to join? So maybe that link does work. Okay. Well, regardless, if you, it's open for questions now. Okay, yeah. So Kestrel was able to join. So I think the link does work. If you want to join the Google Hangout, a little bit easier, then we can talk back and forth. But so yeah. So feel free to ask any questions at any time. While I'm waiting for some questions to come in, I thought I'd give a little bit of background about soft skills and kind of the process that I used to write the book, because I think a lot of people are interested in that, and then also the promotion of the book. Before we get into that, though, I did want to mention, like, give a little bit of an update and just a thank you to you that helped me to launch the book on Amazon. It was a really big success. The book is sitting right now at like 3,042 overall sales in Amazon out of like 8 million books, and number 3 in the computer science and software design and engineering. So so thanks for that, for the help with that. That would not have been possible without everyone that did left reviews and promoted the book. The reviews make a huge difference I know when I'm searching on Amazon, like seeing a bunch of reviews really is helpful. So so I don't see any questions yet, so I'm just going to give some background on the process, because this is a question that I got a lot about the book, which was, how did I go about writing this book? I basically wrote the entire book, the main manuscript, within about 3 months. Now, the process of writing a book usually takes several years, like a published book. But what I did was the negotiations started with Manning probably, I want to say December. It would have been December of 2013 when I was first approached about the book. And the first step in that is deciding on what the book's going to be about and sort of submitting an abstract. So I basically came up with this idea. Kind of the way that it worked is Manning had approached me about writing a book, and I wasn't sure or they didn't really have a book necessarily in mind for me to write. They just wanted to know what kind of book did I want to write. So I basically was thinking about what kind of books could I write. I could obviously write a technical book, but those are kind of short-lived, and it's not really a very profitable thing to write a book in general. So if any of you are thinking about writing a book, especially if it's going to be published by a publisher. Now, self-publishing, this is a different story, and we could talk about that a little bit if any of you have questions about that. But essentially, writing a book with a publisher is usually not very profitable, because you usually only get 10% royalties on the book, and that's sort of the arrangement that I have a similar arrangement with Manning. And basically, I wanted to write a book that was not about making the money, because you're not going to make money on a book, but was something that would have a high impact and a long-lasting value, and would sort of work as the center stone of what I'm trying to do. Hey, Calvin, can you hear me? Or maybe you should be able to talk as well here. Oh, you're muted. Okay. Anyway, so basically, and you can ask questions. When this way you can ask them right live in the chat here. So Kestrel wants to know. Yeah. So basically, Kestrel just asked, was I approached by Manning simply because of my high profile? I think that was. I mean, I had. I've been over the years building up a reputation, just like I try to teach how to market yourself as a software developer. I think that's what ended up happening is Manning had heard of me, had decided that, okay, this guy, and this is a really good thing to consider, is if you're thinking about traditionally publishing a book, right? The thing is, publishers nowadays, because of the way that things have changed with all the digital medium and the social and the web, is that they essentially look for someone who already has an audience, right? Because they don't want to spend a lot of time marketing a book. Publishing houses have gotten smaller and smaller staff-wise. And so what they're looking to do now, especially with so many authors and so many books being published, is they're looking to find someone that already has an audience that's going to be able to sell the book to that audience at least, which will at least cover the cost of publishing. And then hopefully it'll become a bestseller and it'll sell beyond their audience. But at least if they can sell it to their audience, they know they're going to sell enough books probably to cover the cost or only take a small loss on a book. I think a lot of publishers plan on taking a small loss on almost all their books, but then making it up with a big home run on a few books. That's sort of how the game works. So that's, I mean, I'm assuming that's why Manning had contacted me. It's more difficult the other way around, right? If you want to write a book and you just have an idea and submit an abstract, it's going to be a lot harder to get through there. It's better if you can get a publisher to approach you, or if you can build an audience and then say to the publisher, look, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to sell so many copies of the book. I have an audience. I have a list of this many email people that subscribe to my blog or whatever, and I'll be able to sell that book. So anyway, so that's kind of what happened is, and I decided to write soft skills because I wanted to take I wanted to create a book that I would like to read, and a book that I thought would last a lot longer than some of the other books that I could possibly write. Kind of the models that I looked at were things like, in the technical world, Clean Code and Code Complete, which happen to be the two books that Soft Skills competes directly with, right, in the sales on Amazon if you look at the sales rank. And the reason why I picked those two books out is because those are very classic books that stand the test of time. Now, they are technical. They do have code in them. That's where soft skills differs. But I think the kind of idea of picking topics that are going to be important no matter 5-10 years down the road, and that's sort of was the idea. I wasn't going to spend my time writing a book, because writing a book is very hard work. It's a lot more difficult than probably anything else that I've done, and I've done quite a few different things, including creating a lot of Pluralsight courses, and so I wasn't going to spend the time unless it was going to be something that was going to be long-lasting, evergreen. So that's sort of how the book got started, and from that point forward, what ended up happening is an outline for the book. So I basically, in order to come up with an outline for this book, which was a very broad topic book, right? Like, this is basically I'm calling it the Software Developer's Life Manual. In fact, I think that was the title at that point. It was like, okay, this covers all of life. It covers all of the things that I talk about on Simple Programmer. So where do you even start, right? I mean, this could be a 500 book tome, right? Like, life is large. There's a lot of topic here. So where do we go? So what I did was I went through my blog posts and I looked at the most popular blog posts that I had. And basically what I did was I looked to see which ones were the most popular, which ones were gaining the most traction, and that I didn't use the blog posts to write the book, but I used to get ideas. And I see a comment here from Chad. I'll read this. He says, that is key, writing a book that lasts longer. I've written 3 technical books and all had a shelf life of about 1 to 2 years. So yeah, so Chad, that's exactly the kind of problem I was trying to avoid. I mean, in 1 to 2 years is actually not bad, right, from my understanding of technical books, because some of them they're even out of date before they get published, right? This is the problem with iOS and Android books and all of this kind of as technology is moving fast. But yeah, so what ended up happening was I went through and because I wanted to figure out what was resonating with people, what things were most popular. I did the same thing with my YouTube videos. I basically went through all my content and said, okay, what are the things that are most important? What are the things that I've talked about the most? And looked for themes. And a lot of people, I think, probably thought, okay, well, he's just going to take all the blog posts and then put them in the book, and that's not what I did at all. I just wanted to take the themes and then expand upon them, because when you write a blog post, it's a little bit different than writing a book. You might spend a couple hours writing a blog post, but when you write a book chapter, usually that's it's a lot more time, usually 2 to 3 times as much time into it, and it's usually longer and more researched. And so I wanted to take some of these more popular things, expand upon them, look at them from a different angle, look at them from a different lens of time, because a lot of the things that I'd written back 2-3 years ago, I have different views on. So that's what I basically did, got the outline together, and that whole process of negotiating the outline and figuring that out, that takes time. January, February passes. The next thing that they do is they basically submit the outline to reviewers to basically get a pre-review for the book, to look at the book and say, okay, do we like this outline? What kind of suggestions or changes do we have? And do we think that this is a book that someone would actually buy? So we got really good feedback from the reviewers saying, oh yeah, this is totally resonating with me. I love this idea of this, and this was something you have to understand too. The publisher was taking a big risk, because no one had ever written a book about soft skills for software developers. Not really. Like there's some books that are sort of in that, but nothing so broad as to tackle finance and fitness and all of that all in one. So the publisher was kind of going out on a limb and really wanted to test the market. So basically, that's what happened, and then finally, we got the approval for the book, and then the way books work, and I'll let you know too, is that they send out in advance, right? So you get paid to write the book. But it's more like a layaway payment. It's like a loan. You get paid in advance. So for example, for soft skills, my advance was or typically in advance is a few $1,000s, or if you're a real big name author, it might be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Probably not for technical books. Maybe Bob Martin gets something like that. But anyway, basically, you get that money in advance of the royalties. So you're not actually really getting paid. You're only getting paid on royalties. A lot of people don't realize that as well. So that was sort of negotiated, and it's set in place. And if you're a first-time author, you're not really going to negotiate because you don't have any negotiation room. So I didn't really have much room to negotiate, but hey, I want to write a book to be able to have that on, as a credential and to reach people. Really, a book has a publisher. This is another kind of question: is why would I use a publisher instead of self-publish, right? If it doesn't make any money, and one of the big answers for me was that it's a credential, of course, right? Because everyone says, "Oh, look, here's your published book," right? But the bigger thing was that Manning and a traditional publisher has a wider distribution network than I do. It's a chance to reach new people that I wouldn't be able to reach otherwise. It's a big chance to reach dark matter developers, as Scott Hanselman would say, which are those developers that don't listen to podcasts, that aren't on the blogs and things like that. So that's sort of my reasoning behind there. And then, as I said, it's a cornerstone for my business. Obviously, if you've read the book, you know that the book is something that's a marketing vehicle for my courses and for Simple Programmer and all the things that I'm doing. And if you know me, you know that my way of marketing is by providing value first. So if I can provide value through a book, which is really cheap for what you're getting, I mean, like $26 for what I think is a lot of a 504-page book with a lot of information, then that's a good marketing tool to say, okay, look, if you like this, you can come and you can get more, and there's other things that I have to offer, and so I'm hoping to make lifetime customers out of the book, and that's another reason behind it. So cutting to what happens next after the book is agreed upon, reviewed, then comes a timeline, and so that's I worked with my editor and the publisher to figure out a timeline. Now, normally a book like this would take they had charted out a year to write and then like 6 months to edit, and then you go to production. But I said, okay, I'm going to work full time on this book, so I should be able to get this done a lot faster. So I basically projected out. I think it did project out actually a 3-month timeline for the book, which was very aggressive. And one thing that I learned quickly when I sat down, to actually write this book was that even though I was used to working very long hours and putting in a lot of hard work during the day, is that when you sit down to write a book, like I figured, okay, I'll write for like 6 hours a day. No way. about 3 hours worth of writing in a day, or 4 hours, is about enough to make you want to gouge out your eyes. Like it is tough. That is tough, and I was cracking that out pretty much every day for 3 months, and so by the time I finished that book, I was just ready to call it. So and once you're halfway through, you got to finish, right? So at least that's how I am. I know a lot of authors maybe sit on the book for a long time, but I was able to work on it pretty much full time, obviously doing YouTube videos and blog posts and all the other things that I do to run Simple Programmer, but no other major projects. In fact, I had just come off of writing or finishing creating How to Market Yourself as a Software Developer, because I did that from January to I think March, and launching that, and then came right into writing the book. But after writing the book, I did go to Hawaii for a couple of months and take some time off. So, but yeah, and my process for writing that book every day was basically to sit down and and pick out. I'd sort of scheduled out in my Kanban board, if you've seen the way I organize my week, and I basically scheduled out, okay, these chapters are going to be written, basically a chapter a day was my goal. And some days, I obviously moved things around. Some days I got 2 chapters done. Some days when I was busy, had other appointments and stuff, I didn't do a chapter, but it was essentially a chapter a day. That was the goal. Like, I didn't go to sleep at night until I finished my chapter, unless I had planned ahead of time to not do that. And it wasn't easy. I pretty much did it sequentially. I didn't kind of cherry pick the chapters like I was advised. I had a little experiment with Dragon Dictation, because one of the editors said, "Oh, it's so easy to write a book. All you got to do is use dictation software, and then it'll dictate it. You can just talk into the microphone, and there you go. Then you go back and edit it." No, I don't think so. And there's an interesting thing about that too, is writing has you have a different voice when you write, a different style that comes across, a different tone than it does when you talk, and you have almost a different personality in your writing, and that's important. That makes a book read well. So I very quickly discovered that and had to scrap that idea. But basically, went through, and I'm another thing that I do that's a little bit unique, I think, about my writing, is that since I'm so used to writing blog posts where you don't really have an edit and revision process, I tend to ship the first draft. Like, I'll go back and make minor edits, but essentially I think about what I'm going to write, and I sort of let it flow, and that's sort of probably why the book has more of a casual tone to it, which I try to keep. I think I like that tone, and maybe the prose would be better if I went through and did some more serious editing. Not to say that the copywriter didn't come back or copy editor and do some edits or ask me to make some changes. We went through that process, of course, but I generally went through that, the just writing every day and shipping that chapter off to the copy editor. So then the copy editor actually looks at the copy, suggests things, says, "Hey, you need an image here, or diagram," and makes comments. This whole process went through, writing the document in a Word document, shipping it off, getting back a Word document with a bunch of notes, me responding to notes, making changes, shipping that off. So that actually ends up taking a lot of time as well. And then basically, at the end of that 3 months, it's just a matter of catching up on all the edits. And so it took about another month and a half to do all the edits for the book, and then we're ready for production. And then production is a whole another thing where you're proofreading the pages, and going through the proofreader now reads the entire book and looks at it and looks at grammatical and spelling errors and things like that, and goes and you go through that whole process. You got to pick a cover for the book and argue about the cover, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. I mean, there's some more boring details with the whole production process, but that's the kind of the background scoop. I think a lot of people have been asking about that, so I figured that'd be a good way to start off here. Is there any questions I can answer now that I've given my spiel about the story? I'm seeing a link for entreprogrammers.com. How do I stay so motivated? So Kessler asked how I stay so motivated. That's a good question. He says, I'm tearing it up. I'm not always motivated. In fact, I have this little body space app for the gym, like when I track my workouts, and it's got a little thing on there, right? Every time you go to work out, it's like, how are you feeling? It's like tired, sick, I don't know, it's like okay, or it's like amped up, ready to go. And I never pick amped up, ready to go. Like but I do it anyway. And that's really the thing. It's like, it's not to say that there aren't periods that I am motivated, but a majority of your life is spent not being motivated, right? maybe I'm just lazy, but I think most people suffer from the same thing, which is that you don't feel motivated. You feel motivated when you start something new, right? When I first sat down to write my book, I was super motivated. When I got into done with chapter 5, I was done with this. I don't want to write 60 more chapters or whatever, 60 something more chapters. So the motivation tends to go, but the key is that it's really thinking long term, right? It's thinking about the prize, thinking about the finish line, and realizing that the only way to get there, the only way to achieve anything great in life is to be able to push yourself forward when you're not motivated. And I guess you could call that motivation in itself, but I think of it as something different. I think of it as more of determination. And you have to have that. You have to have that gumption in order to be able to overcome the lack of motivation. A lot of people, again, this is something that I think is somewhat controversial, and it's somewhat of a controversial chapter in the book. But a lot of people think they're burnt out when what it really is that they're not motivated and that they need to be able to just push themselves to reach a goal. It doesn't mean that you go on forever, like being, not enjoying what you're doing, right? Or just pushing yourself with no end in sight or no purpose in sight. It means that you have a clearly defined purpose. You have a goal. You have something you're shooting for. And whether you feel like getting up in the morning, whether you feel like writing a chapter, whether you feel like doing whatever it is or not, you do it anyway, because you're going to reach that goal. You're going to put one brick in your wall every day. And so that's sort of my secret to it is you have to kind of get it out of your head that people are just consistently motivated and realize that it's okay to not be motivated, but it's not okay to not finish the chapter. Like even if it's crap, so what? Then rewrite it tomorrow, but get it done today, right? The same thing when I'm working out, the same thing whatever I'm doing, writing a blog post, doing a YouTube video. Hey, ship it. It's hard to do. It is hard, and I was not like this for a large portion of my life. Probably a majority of my career, I was the guy that started all these projects, only did things when I was motivated, and I end up with all these half-finished things. And then at one point, I think it was when I first created my Android app, I said, I'm going to finish this thing. And then I got addicted to finishing. And that's, and because I saw the rewards. I didn't start to see any really major rewards in my career until I became a finisher. And that's, that's the honest truth. That's, one of the biggest secrets that I would give someone is that if you really want to see results, like even if they're small things, right? When you start something, you be the kind of person that finishes it. If you can start doing that and build that habit, man, you're gonna see opportunities open that you never saw before, that you never imagined. Things are just gonna click, and you're gonna see your career and your future skyrocket just in a totally different direction. Yep. So Kestrel says, I guess you're saying it's all about being consistent. And yes, I think that's very true. It's being consistent. All right. Any other questions that you guys have? And if you're on the Hangout, feel free to turn on your mic if you want and just ask a question. If you want to join the Hangout, I've got the link there. I think we can have like 10 slots, so you're welcome to ask a question, even turn on video if you like. uh, any takers? All right, Kestrel is going to be brave. Let's see. Oh, no problem, Kestrel. It's fine. If you got questions, you're giving me something to talk about. I don't want to just drone on about what I'm interested in. So fire away if you have more questions. Okay, so he says I'm moving into management, which isn't necessarily popular with developers. Anyway, is there always a pathway to get somewhere? So what do you mean? Like if you're moving to management, is there a pathway from management? Okay, I currently lead a team of 9 developers. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's kind of weird. Like this is an interesting, thing because I always wanted to just write code all my career, it seems like. And I was always pulled in other directions. Being like a team lead or mentor who never got to really write the code, but was talking about best practices and teaching other people, writing a little bit of code here. But I just wanted to sit down and be my job to write code. But I always got, and even now, right, as doing simple programmer, I write so little code now. But it's not necessarily, it doesn't make something lesser, right? So okay, so Kestrel's saying, I want to become a top level executive. Do you have any thoughts on how uh, how from a programmer that could occur? Okay, so I can see your path. Like you want to go up to management and then become an executive, and that's I think that there is that's totally valid. It's nothing that that's any less. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is it's like sometimes you got to choose the path that makes the most sense for you. Which some people are going to be career programmers and some people are not. Like if your desire is to go up and become an executive, then it's going to be good to have that technical background, but you're going to have to choose a different path. Right, and I think even more so than a software developer, marketing yourself is going to come into play here. But also politics, which we don't have to deal with nearly as much, right? Unless you're trying to climb. But if you're climbing up to the executive level, I would assume that you're going to have to deal with a lot of politics. Once again, I've never been an executive as a software in a software company or a corporation, so I can't give you an exact answer, but I can just give you, what my advice would be, which obviously you're already on the road. You're not going to jump from software developer to executive, right? Unless you get hired into a CTO position at a small company. So if you're going into management and then from management, then you can make that jump. But I think the same rules would apply as becoming as anything that I talk about it with software developer. It's all going to be about the impression, right? The marketing yourself, creating that image, seeing yourself already in that role. I think for example, if you're going for an executive position, you're probably going to have to forego, I don't know where you work at, but wearing shorts and sandals, right? It's like you're going to have to get that power suit. You're going to have to look the part and start acting the part before, so that so it looks like you're out of place as a manager, and it looks like you're more in place as an executive. That's the kind of strategy I would take. Is I would start taking on their roles and responsibilities and the things that make someone, so that when someone comes into the organization and they meet you, they think that you're probably already on the executive team. The things that you're saying, the things that you're doing, the way that you're acting about the company, you're acting as if. I always say, act as if, and then become, right? So that would be my recommendation. Again, this, I'll caveat the advice by saying that I have not moved to an executive position in a company. So good luck with that. That's hopefully that's helpful to you, or maybe it's just my rambling, but that's my thoughts off the top of my head on that. So cool. So anyone else have any questions? Maybe any questions specifically about any chapters in the book or any of the content or the marketing of the book? I could talk about that as well, of how the launch went and kind of my strategy behind that. Let's see, and I'll give it also, like, unless everything totally dies out, 20 minutes, we'll finish up on the hour. Okay, since there's here. uh, thank you, appreciate that. Uh, why is that? Oh, Renee said your launch was brilliant. I wish I thought of it. Or is that what you said? Okay. So anyway, so let me tell. Yeah, I think that it's worth talking about the launch a little bit, and kind of where I got the idea, and sort of what, because you guys probably only saw a small part of the launch, and of course everyone here was a very big part of making it successful on Amazon. But what exactly happened with the launch? So this is something interesting. If I were to launch a book again, I would do things a little bit differently, right? One of the big things that I would do differently is that I would definitely insist on coordinating the launch on Amazon to be the launch, and all of it happening on the same day, and everything arranged ahead of time. Now things still worked out, but it could have been magnified by a lot. So one of the problems is, of course, not to pick on Manning, but Manning typically sells their books ahead of time, right? So what they'll do is they will basically sell their book at using this MEAP process, the Manning Early Access program, which is typically a good thing, right? Especially for most technical books, because people have time to sort of give feedback while the book is being produced. But the problem with that for me was that books pre-selling ahead of time of the Amazon launch means less sales on launching on Amazon. And the way the Amazon algorithm works is it essentially basically just counts sales. So that's how it ranks your book up in the charts. Is it looks at how many sales did you make in a period of time, and it refreshes every hour. So the goal really to a successful launch on Amazon, and I stole this a large portion of this from Tim Ferriss with his launches of his books, because he went from basically a no-name author to famous author of the 4-Hour Workweek, 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Chef, and he had successful launches with all those books. And what he did was sort of what you all were part of is sending out early copies to reviewers of the book and asking them to coordinate on the same day to hit Amazon with reviews and to purchase the book if possible. Now, for many of you, I couldn't really do the purchase thing with, because I was either handing out a free version of the book or you had already bought the MEAP. So that's kind of that's kind of where things didn't quite go according to plan. But I tried to. I think what ended up happening, just to give you an idea here, and this stat is a little bit old, but I heard that Seth Godin, who's a pretty famous author, he published one of his books, and he sold 2,000 copies in a day, which brought him to #2 spot on Amazon overall of Amazon books. Now this is probably a little bit older. You might need to sell more than that nowadays, but essentially, that can give you an idea. So the MEAP for Manning was over 2,000 books, I believe, that were sold for soft skills. So if we could have coordinated that on Amazon launch day, it's possible the book could have been in like the top 10 overall on Amazon, #1 in all the categories. So that's, hindsight, that's what I would have done for the launch. And the thing is, why would you want to do that? Well, because one, you're going to get attention from just being at the top, and two, once you get to the top of the charts, you tend to stick there because people look at the top, they want to see what the top ranking books are, and they want to buy those books. And if you have enough reviews on there, right, then it's more likely to stick, because then, being in the top of whatever the chart is, software development books, and having a lot of high reviews is going to make it so people are more likely to buy that. It gets recommended with other books, right? And so that whole engine starts working. So that was kind of the whole idea with the strategy that I was trying to do there. So so that sort of worked, right? On launch day, 100 Amazon reviews basically came in. That was awesome. That a lot of the message was spread. A lot of books got sold. It went up the charts, up from, it starts out in the like 300,000s on Amazon, and there's 8 million books, and it went up to like, I think it went up to like 10,000 and 5 or 6,000 in a single day. So so that was pretty good, and that was really successful. But so a lot of the strategy also that I had with the launch was coordinating that effort, of course, and then trying to make sure that there were plenty of blog posts that went out. There were videos that was mentioned on the podcast, that I had emailed my list several times. My list has about 7,000 people on it, and that I had some kind of incentive trying to get as many people that could help with the early launch, and then spread the word as possible. And then now I'm doing kind of follow-on things, because now that we've missed a big strike, so now I've started a contest to win a free signed copy of the book, which has gotten like 1,500 entries. A couple of friends of mine have big lists, so I've emailed their list and gotten a lot of sales from there. I've put on some promotions and things like that. I kind of have a schedule. I also have a list of bloggers that I got from a VA to come up with a list of all the popular bloggers and ask them to promote the book. So I'm going to be emailing them out. I'm hitting up all my connections on LinkedIn. There's a whole list of things. I'm going to be hitting up all of the user groups, the software development user groups, and handing out copies of the book. I've shipped out a lot of free copies of the book to sort of high-profile people in the industry to try and get reviews. And then, of course, also getting the forwards for the book, I think, really helps with Scott Hanselman and Bob Martin. So, am I going back on .NET Rocks? So I was actually just on .NET Rocks talking about soft skills. I don't know if you saw that episode. I think it was like last week that it aired, or maybe it was earlier this week. Yeah. So yeah, good point, Kessel. Yep, I'm ready. And that's a good point. Actually, I have a bunch of podcasts scheduled talking about the book, which it's a little bit easier once you've published a book to be able to say, hey, can we talk about this book on the podcast? My general idea now, strategy, is really to just keep on hitting it. I'm not going to quit until it hits #1. So on the software development list. So I'm basically going to be hitting up. I still got tons of resources. There's so many ways to market a book. You can just sit there and brainstorm, and I've got a list, just a chart full of ideas of how to reach people and to use leverage, right? To be able to maximize leverage as much as possible. So for the effort that I take, I want to be able to reach more people. I haven't even hit mainstream media yet. I'm going to be definitely pounding the door of mainstream media in order to try and get some kind of a story about the book and to do some guest posts, perhaps on some of the bigger tech blogs and stuff like that. Cool. So Calvin says he's trying to get his local book club to to go through it. Thanks, Kestrel. He says it's clever, applicable to everyone in the industry. So yeah, so that's kind of the background behind the launch. It's a lot of work to launch a book and to promote a book. Actually, it's definitely a lot more work than you would imagine. I'm basically working full time right now, aside from the few other things that I'm doing, the content I produce every week to basically promote and market the book, which is a lot, like I said, a lot of work. It's a lot of networking, coordination, writing emails, sending emails out, and trying to figure out where I can get the biggest bang for my buck time-wise. Let's see. So I got a question here from D. Hype is Light. He says, when you're looking for an investment property, what are generally your requirements for determining whether or not a property is worth buying? So a little bit different topic here, but definitely on the topic of soft skills, because that's I cover that in the book. So I'll briefly kind of touch on this one. So what I typically do in looking for whether a property is worth buying is to look at, if I put a 30-year fixed loan on it, will it cash flow? So what I typically do, my typical recommendation if you want to get into real estate investment is that you would look at the market for about 3 months, get a real estate agent to send you all properties matching some criteria, which, let's say you're looking for a single family house, investment property, right, duplex, they should know. And you're going to look at every one of the properties they send you, you're going to run it through a formula. What the formula is going to be is you're going to take essentially what the mortgage would be on that, including taxes and insurance, any kind of HOA fees, any kind of maintenance that different properties are probably going to have different levels of maintenance. And you basically want to calculate that all the way down and then compare that against the rent that you're going to get, and then discount that rent by property management fee, assume 10%, and then assume that you're going to rent it 10% under market to ensure that it's not vacant, right? So if it still cash flows at that point, and then you might have a good investment. You might. That doesn't mean that you still don't have to do an inspection and make sure that all those premises that you've made hold. But at that point, you could probably put an offer on the property contingent upon you having a physical inspection of the property, so going and looking at it and verifying, doing what's called your due diligence. So what I typically would recommend, when I'm looking for investment property, is to go out for 3 months and get a feel for the market so that you can spot a deal immediately, and you can also make an offer that makes something that isn't a deal into a deal. A lot of the properties I've picked up, I've got 26 properties A lot of them that I've picked up were properties that were not a deal, but I made them a deal by making an offer that made it a deal. On you having a physical inspection process, going and looking at it, verifying, doing what's called due diligence. So what I sorry, are you asking a question? Oh, okay. No, I think there's something wrong with your mic there. Anyway, so that's pretty much the answer to that question. Hopefully that answers your question. I mean, we could talk about real estate, about picking a property for a long time, but that's kind of the basics. You have to get a feel for the market and understand, what is the market, and then run through the numbers, and that's how you're going to determine whether or not it's a good deal at the very basic level.
Hey John, this is Chad. I was curious, how did you go about, or what was your strategy for asking Scott Hanselman and Bob Martin to do the forward of your book? And did you ask a bunch of other people as well? I mean, like how did you go about doing that? What was your process?
So, okay, good question. So it actually didn't turn out quite what I expected. So I knew I needed a forward for the book. I knew I needed some big names. I had some ideas on who to pick for it, but and I talked to Manning. This is sort of my fault, right? Because I said, okay, well, I'm basically going to, go and send an email, or I was going to have Manning approach them first, because I figured that'd be a better way, right, than me, because they would have more authority, being Manning. So what ended up happening though was they wanted to get the book out before Christmas, so the production timeline kind of got advanced very quickly, and they basically said, okay, look, we're going to ship the book like it's closing in a week. Everything will be final. I guess we're not going to have a forward because there's no way we have time. This was like on a Friday, and so I was like, well, wait a minute, I've still got 3 days, don't I? And they're like, yeah, but who are you going to get to write a forward in 3 days? You're going to get Bob Martin, Scott Hanselman to write a forward in 3 days? I don't think so. So just give up on it. So I said, no, that's not. I'm going to get a forward for this book, and I'm not going to give up on it. So it just by happenstance, and I'm sure Scott won't mind me saying this, but he had emailed me on that Friday asking me for a favor. He asked me to meet someone, like to give them some advice on doing pluralsight courses. So I was like, should I cash in this? Yeah, I got to cash in this favor. So I replied back to Scott, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to do the favor, and I would have done the favor for him anyway. It's not like I would have done the favor anyway, but it just happened to be an opportunity for me as well. So I did the favor for him first. I didn't say anything about the book forward, right? And then I emailed him back, and I was like, there's one thing that you could really help me out, which is I've got 3 days to get a forward for my book. Here's a copy of it. Is there any way you could do this? And obviously Scott Hanselman is someone who I would love to get a forward for this book because of the content in it, right? It fits perfectly. He's very much the kind of person that I feel represents a lot of the book. And then the same thing, so I couldn't just have the one egg, right, in my basket. I had to have another egg. So Bob Martin has always been my big mentor in software development. Someone who, I love Clean Code. That's probably my favorite software development book. It's one I always recommend. So could I get Bob Martin to do a forward for my book? That'd be awesome, right? So I already knew Bob Martin, right, because he had done a video interview for my How to Market Yourself as a Software Developer course, which was pretty. I was totally stoked when he decided to do that. I was like, wow, because I'd emailed him out of the blue, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to do a video interview. So that was cool. And he had also I interacted with him on a Pluralsight course I did, but I don't know him like on a really well basis. So still to ask him to write a forward for my book, with 3 days notice, was one, somewhat rude, and two, pretty much a snowball's chance in hell. So I went for it anyway. I said, hell, you got to try, and you got to be aggressive, and you got to, this is how you get things, is you ask for them, and you don't stop asking, So I wrote the nicest email. I wrote a blog post about this, but but essentially, as soon as I wrote that email to him, right, I go and no, I know exactly what it was. I went over to my Skype and I saw there was a notification on my Skype, and Bob's on my Skype, and I looked at the notification. I was like, oh, it's from Bob, and so I click on it, and you know how it says when it's someone's birthday, right? So, so I was like, oh crap, did I just email Bob Martin on his birthday, asking him to do me a favor out of the blue in 3 days to write a forward for my book, and it's his birthday. I didn't even notice it was his birthday, so I didn't say happy birthday in the email. So I quickly shoot off another email and say, oh, by the way, happy birthday. Um, and I was like, oh man, I'm just screwed here. So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, what can I do? How can I make this happen? Like he's not gonna like this is not a good. I mean, as persuasive I was in my email, this is just not going to happen. So I was like, okay, how can I stand out? So what I did was I said, okay, I'll send him like a gift basket tomorrow that's going to arrive tomorrow. Overnight him a gift basket with a letter in there that says, you know, thank you for being such a mentor, you know, and everything that you've done in software development community. It would be such an honor if you would write, you know, a forward for my book. And obviously I had to shorten the message a little bit. And oh, by the way, happy birthday. And so that's what I did is I actually went on to harryanddavid.com, found a gift basket, overnighted, paid ridiculous fee to overnight it to him, and send it to him. And I come to find out that he's actually flying to London the next day. He actually emailed me back, and he was like, this is before he got the gift basket. There's no way I'm writing forward for this book, or if I by chance had a small window of time on the plane, but don't count on it. Basically no. But I kept on, like as nice as I could. I kept on emailing him. He got the gift basket. I emailed him again, and I had a better copy of the book, like a PDF. And I was like, "This will make this easier for you. If there's any chance, I understand that you probably aren't going to do this, but I'm gonna, I basically told him like, if I've learned anything in life, it's that you don't give up, and that you just keep on trying. That's how you get what you want is you have to be aggressive and to do it in a nice way. I was not like rude or anything. Otherwise, if I was rude, there would be no chance of it. But he came through for me. I got this email. I think it was like I got an extra day for him also, so I was able to email him. I was thinking of reasons why I could email him, and that was one of them. Is I asked the publisher for an extra 2 days. They gave me one. I emailed him say, hey, I got an extra day for you. I don't know, if that changes anything. And essentially, that's what happened. Is on Monday night, I think it was, he emailed me the forward of the book, and I was just like, my jaw dropped, because not only did he write the forward for the book, but he wrote about the story of it, which was just totally. I mean, I couldn't have written a better forward or asked him to write a better forward myself, because that was the message really that I was trying to convey with the book. A lot of the book was this idea of don't give up, like keep going, like you like of standing out, of this being something that if you're willing to go the extra mile, that's where you reap the extra rewards. So thank you.
Yeah, the forward there was awesome. So that's I'm glad to hear your story on your side, because his take on it, y'all definitely line up there, and it's just really good to hear that you were persistent and how that paid off for you. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just thrilled. Like I said, I think when my I'd emailed the forward to my dad, and he was like, I don't know, like that doesn't. I was like, no, this is like you don't understand. This is a perfect forward. Like I don't care that he's calling me rude or whatever. Like the message at the end of this is what, like, because he was convinced to write the forward. And that's the thing, is like, to me it perfectly opens the book, because this is okay. This sets the stage for the book. So, all right, any other questions I can answer? I'll let this go. I mean, it's about 10 o'clock, but since I sent out the email late, and you guys are hanging around, I'll let this go maybe another half hour. If you have to leave, don't feel like you got to stay around. You won't insult me at all, but I'm happy to give as much time as I can, as long as there's questions. So anyone got any questions? Anything I can answer? Don't be shy. It's stretching myself too thin by doing 2 blog posts a week, one at my blog and one at vendors forum that has user blog pages. So that's a good question. There's kind of actually two aspects to this, right? I think one is the aspect of split focus, and the other one is just of the time constraint, possibly of biting off more than you can chew. So like the split focus is the first thing that I would address because I think that's more important. Because can you write 2 blog posts a week? Absolutely, yes. If you set your mind to it, yes, you can, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the split focus is the thing I'd be more concerned about, because what you really want to think about is, if instead of doing 2 blog posts where you have them split, if you're able to do 2 blog posts on one of those 2 blogs or one of those platforms, right? Um, will you have more results? Will you have better results? Now, the answer might be no. It might be that you're casting a wider net, so that's going to be better. But in a lot of cases, being more narrowly focused is going to be more beneficial, and you're going to get more traction. If you're telling me, should I write like 1 blog post a week and every other week write on 2 different blogs, I'd say absolutely no. You're not going to get any traction. It's just too wide of a net to cast, and not enough consistency. But in this case, I would definitely think about the answer to whether or not just play it out in your head. Like a year from now, if you wrote all the blog posts on one of them or the other, would that be would that be more beneficial? Now, once you get past that, then there's the question of, and again, I can't tell you which one. You'll have to kind of decide that for yourself. But can you actually do the 2 a week? It depends on how much. There's a trade-off between how much quality you put in them, right? So if you ask me the question of, should I write one high-quality, like 2,000 to 3,000 word blog post that's well researched with pictures in it and everything, or should I write 2 smaller blog posts, just to get more content out? I would definitely say do the one, and if it's a question of equally good blog posts, then can you actually do the 2? It really depends on how focused you are, how bad you want it, and what your time constraints are. There's definitely, like, starting out blogging, I encourage you to write like 2 to 3 blog posts a week for a couple of reasons. One, like, there's a learning curve as far as getting used to writing and getting into the groove and the habit. And 2, it takes some time to get some traction. So if you can get like 50 blog posts in your blog as quick as possible, that's going to help you to get traction faster, because then you're going to start getting SEO from Google and start getting people coming to your blog. I realize not everyone can do that, but so that's another thing to consider, is maybe you're doing this for some period of time. Maybe 2 is not a sustainable pace for you over the long haul, but maybe it's something that you could do for a short period of time. Let's see. How do you come up with ideas? I have an extremely hard time. What was the last part of that? I have an extremely hard time. I don't know if it keeps the. Hard time generating ideas. Okay. That's a tough one as well. I have pretty much blogged. I was just telling my wife this the other day. I was like, I've pretty much blogged about, written about, done YouTube videos about, podcasted about everything that I have to talk about. I don't have anything left, right? I mean, I've been doing this for several years now with like multiple, every week I release, all kinds of content. And so I've pretty much said it all before. But here's the thing. Say it again. Say it from a different perspective. Say it, you're going to grow and change. Read more books. Get new insights. Right. You can respin the same content like from a different angle. A lot of times I will do that, and it's because I have something else to say about it. Right. There's always. I mean, there's. I think I just read this. Maybe it was in Nathan Barrett's Authority book, but it was like, or I might be mixing up the sources. Anyway, someone wrote a whole book, or Charles Darwin wrote a whole book on some like barnacle or something, like a 400-page book on a barnacle. So if he can write a 400-page book on a barnacle, then you can come up with 1,000 or 2,000 word blog posts, right, every single week. It's just a matter of, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just get the whiteboard out and I will just sit down and just brainstorm ideas. Like, don't don't filter it. This is it seems silly because this is what we learned in school and the whole but the brainstorming thing really does work. You sit there, you write ideas, and then you pick the best one. If you write 20 ideas on a whiteboard, I guarantee you're going to have 2 good ones out of there. And if you can't, if you let stream of consciousness, and if you just let everything fly out of your mind that comes out of your mind, you're going to come up with 20. So I mean, that's pretty much a guaranteed success. The other thing that I would say is basically make sure that you that you are having a list of blog posts, and that you add to that list as much as possible whenever you think of something, so that you have a resource to draw from. So I've got several different lists going, so there's always at least something I could write about. And when all else fails, just write. Write about how much you don't like writing. Write about whatever comes to mind, and just to make sure that you do it. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely something. And as you go through and you exhaust your material, what you have to do is you have to find new material, new things, and you're going to find that from reading new things, from having conversations with people is a great way. Like if I have a real good conversation with someone, especially something that's not that I want to say argument, but borderline, like we're have differing views, like 5 blog posts could come out of that conversation alone. And you're already you're thinking the ideas, so that it flows a lot easier. Let me see here. So I've got a couple of questions that came in on the chat. Okay, this one. Was there a time when your learning process was really put to the test, i.e., was there something that proved really difficult to learn, even with a process in place? That's a good question. I'm trying to think if there was ever something that was really, really challenging, even with the process in place. Honestly, I think I would have to say no to this. I think that, and I'll give it with this caveat though. The caveat is that if you break it down small enough, everything is pretty much easy to learn. Right? It's like, yes, there's things that are difficult, but they're usually difficult in the big scope of them. So, I mean, I've learned programming languages in a week, which seems like a very difficult thing to do. But hey, most programming languages are like other programming languages. And when you don't try to learn the entire language and all of the libraries and every bit of it, but enough of it to be 80% effective, it can be done in a week. It honestly can. And I've done that multiple times. And I know other people who have done it. So, maybe that would be the closest thing as to putting it to the test, is trying to learn a programming language and then teach a programming language in a week. That was definitely a challenge. But with the process that I had in place of learning, I really don't think that it was something that was impossible to, or it never seemed impossible. And I know that sounds really kind of crazy, but honestly, it's something that if you do this a lot, if you kind of time box and say, a lot of times I think what we do when we approach learning is we try to learn this huge thing, and we don't put bounds on it. When you put very clear bounds and you have a time limit, and you have to learn this thing by this amount of time in order to accomplish this thing, right? Very clear, right? Very clear path. I need to learn this programming language in order to produce these 7 modules in this Pluralsight course, and it needs to be done this week. That gives me a very, very clear definition and path to go on, and it's amazing how fast that you can learn when you have something like that. A lot of times people approach learning, they're like this, they're like, oh, I have to learn physics. Well, what the heck? You need to define, like, first of all, why are you learning physics, right? For what purpose, right? And then once you know the purpose, then you know what specifically you need to know. You don't need to know all of physics. You need to know, like, how springs work, or how gravity works, or how, whatever it is, how 2 bodies interact under a certain circumstance, or planes, or whatever it is, right? You need to know it in order to solve some problem or to do something. Then that scope goes way down. Then you've got a much easier time. So that's kind of, what I would say about that. And really, when you look at it that way, there's not a lot of things that is all that hard to learn, right? It's just like writing code. There's no code that's super hard to write when you break it down, because everything always comes down to a line of code to the smallest. And this it's the same thing with learning. You just apply that same process that you do to write an algorithm to learning. You don't try and write the whole algorithm. You break it down into steps. You write just enough code to fill in each step. Same thing with learning.
Yeah, John, I just wanted to make a comment on that and ask you one other question.
Oh, sure.
I think that's fantastic. I've had great success in um, agreeing to do a talk, and
Yeah.
then so I'm going to talk in 2 months. It's like I have a cursory knowledge of this technology, whatever. It's like, but now spend those next couple months really digging in there and figuring out, toying with it, and then figuring out what it is I want to talk about on that technology. So I think learning with the end result of teaching it, it's a totally different paradigm than I think
Yeah.
just haphazardly learning. So I think that's a fantastic thing. And I know you talked about that in the book, and I thought it was really good. A question for you: you talked about the blog post earlier. Do you schedule posts, whether it's tweets and Facebook or LinkedIn and blog posts? Just schedule some of them, and how do you go about, I guess, managing your social media outlet stuff?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. So this is something I definitely schedule, right? If I hung out on, some people don't like this, but if I hung out on social media all day and interacted on it all day, I would get nothing done, right? And I think of it as mostly, there's consumers and producers, and at different times we're different things. But I right now I'm in a producer mode. I'm mostly producing stuff, so I have to. It's a platform for me to send out. Now I also receive communication, right? If you tweet me on Twitter, I'm going to most likely respond to you, and probably fairly quickly if I'm checking it, because it's an interactive medium. But I'm not reading people's tweets, right, unless I'm mentioning them. And I know that it offends some people, but honestly, when at the scope that I'm trying to operate at to be productive, I have to do that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So with that said, of course, I do have to schedule everything, right? So I don't sit there on Twitter and Facebook. What I do is I was using a tool, and I still use a tool called Buffer, which basically every Monday I would sit down and I'd go through and I would schedule, like I have like a checklist. I'll say, okay, I want to schedule a certain percentage of news of other people's stuff, right? And then a certain percentage of like inspirational quotes and stuff, because that's something that's important to me. And then a certain percentage of my content that I want to recycle, because recycling your content is really important to get the most mileage out of it. And then a certain percentage of promotions for my stuff, for my book, for my courses, for things like that. So I don't annoy people, but I need to do that in order to stay in business, right? So, and that's a good book on this, Gary Vaynerchuk, called Jab, 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 Right Hook, I believe. And he talks about this idea of like you give, and then you make an ask. And that's sort of my strategy, is to kind of keep that ratio. And I try with the book promotion lately. It's been a little bit more of of promoting my stuff, simply because so many people have been saying things about the book, and I want to retweet them and stuff. So that's not normally my mode of operating, but I also found this tool now that I'm using called Meet Edgar. So it's at meetedgar.com. And what it allows you to do is basically like schedule, like create a content library of all your blog posts, YouTube videos, and stuff like that. And then basically schedule them on a rotation so that it will automatically pull from that library, so you don't have to always fill every week the buffer with stuff. It'll just sort of automatically pull. So that's basically what I'm using, and most of it's scheduled. I do occasionally send unscheduled tweets or something, but a lot of what I do is scheduled, just simply because I don't have the time to be sitting there every single day and messing with it. Cool. So let me see. I got a couple other questions here. This question app just kind of randomly. Okay, what can I do if I want to switch my career from being a tester to a developer? I've been pushed to work as a QA person, and I don't feel I'm getting experience as a developer. I've been training in my own way and not sure how to tell this to my boss. Gosh, this is a tough question. This is something that I had actually faced early in my career. I was a self-taught developer when I first started out. I started like writing games. I was if you're old enough to remember MUDs on the internet, the multi-user dungeons, like the precursor to MMOs. That's what really got me into programming, is I wanted to create my own. So I took the source code and I learned C by manipulating C. And then there wasn't an internet, so to speak, so you couldn't just get books and like. So I got some books from the library and stuff, and I combined that with just hacking through this messy code. But that doesn't get you a job writing code, unfortunately. So I got a job in QA, and I had to figure out, how am I going to go from QA to development. I know how to write code, like sort of, you know, and I don't want to be stuck in this QA job. I want to move up to a developer job because that's what I really want to do. So there's a few things that I did that I would kind of recommend. Obviously, you're doing the right thing by training on your own. You have to do that, right? You have to show, like, you're gonna have to show more initiative. There's this barrier, right, in the tech world where it's like this division, QA and dev, and ne'er the two shall meet. There's no jumping that gap. No one wants to see you jump that gap because there's like a status. There's a status of being developer and there's the status of being QA, and they're different. So no one wants to see you make that, and no one wants to believe that someone who's QA could write code. It throws everything out of whack. So you have to work extra hard to. It's easier to come in as a brand new developer than it is to go from QA to development. At least that's my experience in all the companies that I've worked at. But the way to bridge that gap, I think, is number one, train on your own and work harder than anyone else. Like, show that you're building certifications and all these things that show that you can write code. If you do open source projects or build mobile apps or whatever it is, start building up that portfolio to prove that you can write code and that you are a good software developer. The other thing that I really did, I got obviously all my Microsoft certifications and stuff in order to mostly as proof. And then the other thing I did was I helped developers out. So I stayed late, I did extra work, right? I worked my hours, did my QA job, and then I asked some of the developers, say, hey, could I help you with something? If you have something, a little piece of a bug to fix or something like that, could you give me access to the code? Or can I just sit with you and just help you? And however that I can. And because I was putting in extra hours to do that, no one could really complain. And I was actually and because I was actually more knowledgeable than the developers, because I was training myself and teaching myself and making sure that I was better than them, but not letting them know. Definitely not letting them know, but making sure that I could answer their questions and help them. They were happy about this. And what ended up happening, the way that I actually jumped the gap, is one day one of the developers, like I was on a QA team, and they wanted to move me or assign me this project, and the developer's like, whoa, 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 you can't take John. John is helping me. John is like, I got to get this feature done. If you want this done on time, you need to have John here helping me. And so the manager, dev manager, came over and he's like, well, aren't you QA? Aren't you on a QA team? And I said, yeah, but I'm helping out. I don't have to do that if that's not what you want. And of course they're like, no, we want you to meet the schedule. So that was pretty much it. At that point, it's like, okay, we need this resource. We need John. He's now on the development team. Here's your dev machine. So I mean, it happened quickly, but it didn't happen quickly, right? It was all this prep and really planning this out. And so it's hard to make that jump. It really is. But I think you got to have a strategy. You got to make sure that it's known that you're writing code and that you're helping out. If it's your ambition, if you say to your manager, the development manager, if you say, hey, I really want to be a software developer, I don't want to be QA, they don't care. Why do they care? So what? But if you make it appear to them, and they realize that you're going to be a huge asset to them, like that you're going to help that they need you to be on the dev team because of what an asset you'll be to the team, or what you can do for them, for the company, to get the product done. That's going to be the thing that's going to get you there. It's not going to be because so many people try to make the mistake and telling their boss, this is what I want, this is what I want. No one cares what you want. They care what you can do for them. And so make it about what you can do for them, and that's going to be your ticket to it. Dev Game 101. Oh, okay. Oh, that is actually how to create a 3D game in 90 minutes using Unity 3D. So yeah, so everyone check out devgame101.com, right? And check out Chad's webinar. You've got 5 days left to join. This looks pretty cool.
Well, thanks. I appreciate giving the shout out. I felt bad just even putting the link, much less. But anyway,
No.
that was me going for it after you making the comment earlier. So again, I have a hard time of doing this whole self promotion thing. But again,
Oh,
you talk about game development, got you in a program, and I was like, that's the whole reason why I got into development to begin with. There was a game that you type commands into, like the old text of entry games, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
being able to see that I could type something in a computer and it responded, I was like, oh, that's fantastic. Then of course found out, well, you can actually write code to do that. So anyway.
yeah. No, hey, don't worry about it. Seriously, like I'm all about marketing yourself. You took the bold step to post the link in there, so I'm going to say it again. Check out devgame101.com and sign up for Chad's webinar. This is, Unity is definitely something I'm interested in, especially creating a 3D game in 90 minutes. That sounds pretty cool. So
Cool. Check it out.
cool. Let's see. Trying to see if there's any other questions here that did that answer your question, Renee? It's like, and I think that's pretty much all the questions that I have here. Does anyone else have any other questions? I get 9 more minutes and then I'll wrap it up before I get in trouble. All right. Well, if no one's got any more questions, I'll give you one last chance. If you have any questions, you can ask pretty much anything you want. All right, cool. Well, hopefully this was useful to you. I'll be broadcasting, or I'll be sharing this. Uh, so it should be recorded. This is my first time doing like one of these Q&As on Google Hangout. But yeah, so I'll be sending it out to everyone. So thanks for joining, and thanks for again for all the support with the book. Really appreciate it. There's still a lot of work to be done to promote the book and to get it up there, but I'm going to do everything that I can to try and get it to the top of the absolute top of the charts. So thanks again. All right, guys. Have a good night. Take care.